Go ahead.
Okay. Welcome. I'm Shane Conley. I am retired from Five Rivers Metro Parks. I have been researching and collecting things in my family since I was probably 9 years old, and that's a little over 50 years ago now. And I'm here tonight to talk to you folks about preserving what you have that maybe someone has passed down in your family, and some of the best practices that I've come across through trial and error, through learning it about at workshops, through genealogy workshops, different places. And so I'm going to show you some of the tips and tricks I've picked up through the years, and we'll go from there. There's a couple spelling errors on this, but here's a brief handout there for tonight. I'm going to pass around a book. This is a company that it's called Safe Publications. They're out of Pennsylvania, and they produce a lot of different articles and objects that you can purchase to store your family artifacts in. They're really a great company. One of the things that I have purchased from them is this. It is a postcard album, and the pages are acid-free, the plastic is acid-free, and that's one of the things that you'll want to always look for when you're wanting to store your family archives and your family papers, is acid-free stuff. I've started this photo album, or this postcard album, and if you have postcards in one of those old paper albums that have the black pages in it, that have the little square corners that are glued down, I would suggest that you migrate everything out of that and put it in something like this. It doesn't have to be this big. They make them about half the size too. Or you can even buy something like this, which postcards will fit into this. It's called a currency album, but you can pick these up at a hobby store and use those as well for postcards if you don't have very many. I have hundreds, so I have a couple of these albums that I've started. Those are just a couple tools that I have used, that I have found to be really helpful. Now, if you're like me and people in your family found out that you were the family historian, and somebody comes along and says, you know, hey, Shane will take it. He takes everything history. And they come to you and they plop down a box like this on your kitchen table. And it's like, oh my gosh, what am I getting myself into? Well, don't be discouraged. There's ways that you can make these things happen. Here's the old album that I was talking about, that I've migrated my postcards out of. And I'm still migrating them out of here. There's still some in here. But what has happened, and what does happen to these, the edges of the paper get real brittle. They start deteriorating, and the postcards that are left in here will start to deteriorate around the edges too, because it creeps. So you'll want to, again, move everything out of an old paper album like this and into something more sturdy, long-lasting, sustainable. One of the things people ask about most often is, and this has probably happened in more families than I can count, but somebody will give you a box of photographs. Now, I've kept this, I've hung on to it, I've digitized all of these, but this is one of those things that I like to tell folks, don't get discouraged. What I suggest is, when you get a box of photographs, start by going through it. And it's really simple. And what I do is, what I tell people is, separate them by person, separate them by place, or here's another one. This is really hard to see, but this is like a city. Here's another place. This is the Serpent Mound down in southern Ohio. So separate them by place, and then separate them by things. So person, place, or thing. In this case, I'll say thing is the dog. And once you've done that, Then start looking for telltale signs of anything that may be written on the photograph so that you can help identify it. Now, I've identified these. I haven't put it on the actual original, but when I digitized them, if I knew who they were, I added that to my digital record. So you might want to go back and add that. You're going to come across some things that might be a little disturbing when somebody gives you a box of this. Here is a young child in their coffin. So don't try to get too upset. Don't try to put too much effort into it. Just what you're trying to do is just sort everything, person, place, or thing, and start from there. And then the next time your family has a get-together at Christmas, Easter, or whenever, take what you have, and if you haven't identified some of the items, start passing them around at that family get-together and ask everyone there if they know who this person is or where this place was. And then write it down. Write it on the back if you have to. If you don't have something to write on, or if you don't want to write on the back of these, just use what I call some of my best friends. Take a little one of these. It's a little strip of paper. Just put it on the back. You can easily peel it off later and write on the back who it was. And I've done that with a few of mine. For instance, these folks here, once I figured out who they were, I put a label down here. Again, I've digitized it, and I can peel this off if I want to, or you can put it on the back. Again, that's the kind of thing that you'll want to do in keeping your records and keeping your family tree. It's really cool too. You might get Christmas cards from an old elderly aunt that saved them for 50 years. So when you do, again, go through them. There's tidbits of information a lot of times that families shared in Christmas cards that maybe wasn't shared anywhere else. And you'd be surprised what you'll come across. For instance, somebody might say, Mary Beth had her baby girl, Susie, a month ago. Well, you know it's Christmas. A month ago probably would place it in November. And if you know the year, sometimes folks wrote the year on the inside or on the outside of the card when they sent them. That is another way in which you can start learning more about your family and place them in context of time. So don't overlook anything. There's valuable information in whatever you've been given. So photographs is one of the most common things that you may end up with. Another thing that you might end up with are old newspaper clippings. And you may not have a clue as to why somebody clipped a poem out of a newspaper from December the 12th, 1926. Well, look and see who the poem is by and see if that name is in your family. See if you can connect that person to your family tree. If you can, then somebody in your family is a published author. They got published in the newspaper. So again, don't overlook anything. You may wonder why somebody kept the photo of an old railroad depot. Again, there may be a connection in your family. Maybe somebody worked for that railroad, and that's why somebody cut that out. You may end up with old business cards. You may end up with old ink blotters. Again, this ink blotter is from an insurance